Bitcoin is a bulwark against precisely this kind of government and corporate expansion and intrusion. In fact, it has been used to bypass oppressive government controls over the monetary systems, as in Canada and Myanmar. As president, I will make sure that your right to hold and use Bitcoin is inviolable. First, I will defend the right of self-custody of Bitcoin and other digital assets. You should be able to own your own private keys the same as you own the keys to your car or own your wallet. Your wallet, whether it's in your pocket or in your computer, is your own. I don't think the government has the right to demand access to your Bitcoin key or indeed any of your passwords. To say otherwise is to cede essential territory to the surveillance state. Second, I will uphold the right to run a node at home. KYC requirements should be applied at the level of banks and exchanges, not at the level of nodes. Otherwise it would become impossible to run the software. The whole point of Bitcoin is that it's decentralized. Anyone can run a node, and it's important not only for Bitcoin, but for democracy to be decentralized. Third, I will defend use-neutral, industry-neutral regulation of energy. President Biden's 30% tax on energy for Bitcoin miners requires an invasive surveillance apparatus to monitor what is happening in individual computers. It sets a terrible precedent in which everything that you do that requires electricity must now be monitored by the government. That's why I also support people's rights to refuse smart meters in their homes. Fourth, I will make sure that the United States remains the global hub of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Major established companies like PayPal, Fidelity, and Block are investing heavily in Bitcoin-related software development. Some of the best engineers and coders in the tech industry work in this field, and we want to keep them here in America. I will reverse the government's growing hostility toward this industry and keep innovation at home. That leads to my fifth point. Events like the FTX calamity prove that some kind of regulation of the crypto industry is needed. My administration will consult with knowledgeable people like yourselves to establish sensible jurisdiction and governance. For starters, we must recognize that Bitcoin is not a security and should not be regulated as such. Bitcoin is in a class by itself. Its wide decentralization, I'm told now that there are 40,000 nodes, prevents a lot of the insider trading, manipulation, and pump and dump schemes that plague other cryptocurrencies. Six, I will carefully consider whether individuals like Ross Ulbricht were prosecuted I will consider whether they were prosecuted for actual crimes or as a means to crack down on crypto. If they had been unjustly made an example, I will consider pardoning them, and I will act very quickly to do so. Before I conclude, I'd like to say something about the environmental criticism at Bitcoin. It may be unpopular to say here, but even though those criticisms are exaggerated, they have some degree of validity. It's exaggerated because Bitcoin miners chase the cheapest energy. They have to do that for economic reasons. And Bitcoin mining tends to go where the energy is the least expensive, drawing a lot of idle base load as well as excess peak generation of renewable power. We environmentalists will continue to pressure you to improve. However, whether or not the criticism is valid, I want to make one thing plain. The environmental argument should not be used as a smokescreen for an agenda of suppressing Bitcoin. And let me repeat that. Energy use should not be used as a pretext for an agenda of suppressing Bitcoin. Totalitarians hate anything that they can't control, and they will use any pretext necessary to control it. I am aware of an eerie parable to the COVID years when public health became a pretext to obliterate our basic rights and freedoms. The COVID public health emergency is gone now, and we must not now replace it with some new set of rationales to further the decades-long erosion of our freedoms. Finally, I'd like to clarify a couple of things. I'm not an investor, and I'm not here to give investment advice or to promote Bitcoin over other cryptocurrencies or other currencies. That's the job of the free market, not the President of the United States. My interest is one, I am an ardent defender and a lifelong defender of civil liberties. And Bitcoin is both an exercise and a guarantee of those freedoms. Two, Bitcoin is a major generator of the kind of innovation our country now needs. Three, Bitcoin embodies two of my highest ideals, transparency and trust. Americans have come to distrust the government, including the way that it has manipulated our money supply to benefit the very rich and to prosecute endless wars. Bitcoin is a neutral currency, beyond the ability of government or indeed any authority to manipulate. In our current system, nearly all of our transactions are transparent, all right. They're transparent to government and corporations, but their machinations and activities are not transparent to us. They are opaque. The public ledger of Bitcoin makes every transaction transparent to everyone. It might therefore be a harbinger of a future in which the government is transparent to the people, and that would be democracy. Now, I'm proud to make an historic announcement, but first, if you can please pull out your cell phones. Our campaign will be the first presidential campaign in history to accept Bitcoin donations through the Lightning Network. And today we move one step closer to the future. Today we show the world the power and the durability and the flexibility of Bitcoin. I want to conclude by saying this. Almost everyone in this room is aware of the link between Bitcoin and democracy and freedom. And that's why almost everybody that I meet who is involved in Bitcoin is passionate about it. They're not passionate because it's an interesting currency. They're passionate because of the deep representation of a deep need that we have for liberty and democracy, and the promise that this innovation has to guarantee those virtues. We are now living in this age of turnkey totalitarianism, where this emerging technology which can empower totalitarian regimes. And our job is to try to build and fortify democratic institutions at the same rate as that totalitarian instruments are being expanded in their power. Things like AI, which really are going to threaten democracy at its base. We need to not be chipping away at our democratic institutions. We need to be fortifying the ones that exist and building new ones. And the biggest, most important one on the horizon is Bitcoin, because it can't be manipulated. All of you, I know, are here, again, not because you love a currency, but because you love our country, you love democracy, you love freedom. And in that sense, your support of Bitcoin puts you in the same category as the framers of the Constitution that gave us that Bill of Rights, that created these democratic institutions. And you are the current manifestation of that impulse. So thank you all very much for everything that you do. And thank you for being part of this movement. Bye.
Welcome back to Bitcoin 2023 on the Bitcoin Magazine live stage, brought to you by Marathon. We just heard one of the most amazing talks I've ever heard about Bitcoin at an event in my entire life, and I've been doing this for many years. And before I go to our panelists who are returning, I just got to thank Justin Trudeau one more time. He called me and my friends a terrorist a little over a year ago, and it really hurt me. And when I heard that, it made it all worth it, because that was the orange pill for what we just heard. And had Justin Trudeau not been the greatest Bitcoin evangelist the world has ever seen, we wouldn't be here right now listening to this. And one day, if it does happen, what we saw there, and he promises to bring in your right to hold Bitcoin, self-custody, run a node, Justin Trudeau is going to go down in history as probably the biggest idiot that ever ran a country. But the good news is he lives in Canada and he can apply for MAID. So he won't really have to live with it for too much. But I want to turn to our panelists because I'm a little bit speechless here.